Welcome back, everyone. This is Brother Doug alongside my sister Shoshana, um, her son Sean, and Brother Bobby, Sister Kristen, and Brother Dennis. We are doing part 2 of Defiling the Temple, physically defiling the Temple of Yahuwah, and we're going to do a little bit of change of pace. We probably should have done this originally. Um, we are going to actually explain why it's important not to defile the temple, and we're going to actually go into the New Testament to kind of show you how it's important and why it's basically a beginning thing for a new convert. So we're going to first go to Acts chapter 15, verse 29, and it says, I'm going to put it on share screen here so the viewers can see this. Let's see here. eSword, share computer sound. Here we go. All right. So it says Acts 15:29 says that you abstain from meats offered to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication, from which if you keep yourselves, you shall do well. Meaning that you're following Yahusha, you're doing the right things if you begin with this stuff, basically. So this is kind of like, I would say this is sort of a type of requisite for the faith. Once you accept Yahusha, you should start with these basic signs of obedience to show that you want to follow him. And these are like basic stuff. So basically, you abstain from meat offered to idols. Now, it's kind of tricky in modern day because there's a lot of restaurants you can go to that have statues of Buddha, restaurants that have statues of Mary. Now, are they literally offering the meat to idols? No, but, Scripture also says that we should avoid the appearance of evil. Okay, so if something appears bad, we probably should avoid it. So that's just my personal viewpoint on it. It's not everyone's viewpoint, in this group. I don't know if everyone agrees with me, but I stay away from Chinese buffets. I stay away from places that have physical idols right in their place as you walk in. So I try to stay away from any place that has like a graven image. So
bad things might happen. You don't have to worry about it.
So that is going to be where we're starting at here. And actually, we're going to go up to the previous couple verses up here. There's Acts 15:20. It says, but that we write unto them that you abstain from pollution of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. Now, blood could be referring to two different things. Kind of want to explain this to the viewers, that it can either be you're consuming blood literally, like the people in the occult do, the Illuminati do, or you could be eating things that have blood in it, which we previously, if you want to see the first video, we read from Leviticus chapter 11, where it talks about do not eat anything with blood in it. So just trying to give you a precedence on what Paul's actually referring to in context. So he's also talking about fornication. Now, in modern day, fornication would be, like not trying to be disgusting, but masturbation, pornography, that's fornication. So that's a form of fornication, lusting after someone, a form of sexual immorality or fornication. Yahusha said that if you look at a woman with the lust in your eyes and you lust after her in your heart, you've already committed adultery. You don't have to physically commit adultery to commit adultery. So that's just an example. And I think if we move on here, we move on to Corinthians here. We go to 1 Corinthians, and this is pretty much the core of why are we to be careful with our bodies, because our bodies are a temple of the Separ Spirit of Yahuwah the Father. As it says I'm reading from the Restored Name King James because they actually have the Tetragrammaton restored in here. It actually has YHWH here. Know ye not that you are the temple of Yahuwah, a temple of Yahuwah, using a metaphor that our bodies are a temple, and that the Spirit of Yahuwah dwells in you, the set-apart Spirit. If any man defiles the temple of Yahuwah, him shall Yahuwah destroy, for the temple of Yahuwah is set apart, which temple you are. So that was 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 16 to 17, basically very literal, that Yahuwah's wrath abides upon people that defile his temple. Now, our bodies are a temple. And I know somewhere in Paul's letters, maybe one of my brothers and sisters can help me out. I know somewhere in Paul's letters says that we were bought with a price. We do not own our own bodies. We belong to Yahuwah. He paid the price for us. So I don't have that written down at this moment, but I know it's somewhere in one of Paul's letters where he references that we were bought with a price. We belong to Yahuwah, and we should not defile his temple. So let me see here. Now we're going to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17. And it says, wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, says Yahuwah, touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. And just real quick, I'm going to go to the scripture 2009, because they cite cross-references a lot. So Paul's actually quoting from Isaiah 52 here, verse 11. He's actually quoting from the prophet Isaiah, and he says, turn aside, Isaiah 52, verse 11. Turn aside, come out from there, touch not the unclean. Come out of her midst, be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yahuwah. So now this context here is about end times prophecy too, about getting out of Babylon. Excuse me, sorry about that. But Isaiah 52:11 is specifically talking about coming out of Babylon and not touching the unclean thing. So now let's see here. We also got, I'm thinking what we should do here to go to, let's see, the other New Testament verses here. We should go to Matthew 15, which is often misinterpreted. So we're going to go here and pretty much read most of the chapter. Matthew 15:1. Then there came Yahushua to the scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem, saying, why do your taught ones transgress the tradition of the elders? Notice it says tradition of the elders, for they do not wash their hands when they eat bread. But he answering said to them, why do you also transgress the command of Yahuwah because of your tradition? And it gives me a footnote, Matthew 5, verse 20. Okay, and actually it says, for I say unto you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so that's a cross-reference for verse 3 in Matthew 15, what I just read. So as we read along here, verse 4, for Yahuwah has commanded, saying, respect your dad and your mom. Cross-reference, Exodus 20:12, Deuteronomy 5:16. So in the Torah, this is a commandment in the Torah, in the 10 Commandments. Honor your dad and your mom. He who curses dad or mom, let him be put to death. And then here you got the cross references for that is Exodus chapter 21, verse 17. And let me go back. For some reason, I clicked on it, and let me see here. Let me just go back real quick. This little thing sucks about these apps. All right, and Leviticus chapter 20, verse 9 is the other cross-reference, so as we read along here. Verse 5 of Matthew 15, but you say, whoever says to his dad or his mom, whatever profit you may have received from me has been dedicated, meaning that it's not a big deal that you've received to me, that it's already been dedicated, is certainly released from respecting his dad or his mom. So you have nullified the command of Yahuwah by your tradition. Hypocrites, Yashayahu, Isaiah, rightly prophesied about you, saying, these people draw near to me with their mouth and respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commandments of men. And you can find that in Isaiah chapter 29:13 of the Septuagint only, because they don't word it correctly in the Masoretic text, but that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. in the Septuagint, it will actually say in Isaiah 29:13, and Yahuwah has said, these people draw near to me with their mouth, and they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, but in vain do they worship me, teaching the commandments and doctrines of men. So again, Yahusha is rebuking the Pharisees, just to get the context so far. He's rebuking the Pharisees for saying that his disciples are sinning because they eat with unwashed hands, basically. It has nothing to do with eating pork. Okay, so verse 8 in Matthew 15, back to Matthew 15. These people draw near to me with their mouth, honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Okay, so that's verse 9. Now verse 10, and that's pretty much it, actually. So verse 9 was the end of that. Also, another cross-reference would be Mark chapter 7, verses 6 to 7. Is another one that quotes Isaiah 29. He says, he answered and said to them, well has Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. So again, the reason I cited this was because this is referring to being unclean, and they taught a commandment of men that is contradictory to the commandment of Yahuwah, that you are unclean by eating unwashed hands. And so that is not part of the Torah. That's not part of his commandments. And so that's the reason I brought that in. And let's see here. I think that's pretty much it for the New Testament cross-references that I could find. So I think we're going to jump back into where we left off. We left off at starting Deuteronomy. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 14 and pretty much read most of the chapter, starting with verse 1. So verse 1 is going to say, you are the children of Yahuwah, your Elohim. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. For you are a set-apart people unto Yahuwah your Elohim. Yahuwah has chosen you to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. And this is where, actually, I want to speak about this real quick and unmute everyone. I actually want to speak about this. This is where Peter gets this, where you see in 2 Peter 2:9, and he says, you are a chosen priesthood, okay? He's literally referencing back to Deuteronomy 14. So many Christians are like, I'm chosen, all that, but not realizing where Peter's getting this from. He's actually getting this from Deuteronomy 13, saying that you are not to shave your head for the dead, nor to shave the front of your head, or shave front of your head, or cut yourself for the dead. And then in verse 2 is where Peter gets, you are a set-apart people, a peculiar people for himself. So Peter's getting that from Deuteronomy 14:2. So this is going to start getting to the commandments in Deuteronomy 14. Do not eat what is abomination. These are the living creatures you eat. So this is going to go into the same stuff. Kind of reiterates Leviticus 11. Do not eat the ox, sheep, and goat. Verse 5, the deer, gazelle, roebuck, wild goat, mountain goat, antelope, and mountain sheep, and every beast that has a split hoof divided in two, chewing the cud among the beasts you do eat. But of those chewing the cud, or those having a split hoof completely divided, you do not eat, such as these, the camel and the hare and the rabbit, for they chew the cud, but do not have a split hoof. They are unclean to you. And the pig is unclean for you, because it has a split hoof but does not chew the cud. You do not eat their flesh or touch their dead carcasses. These do eat of all that are in the waters, all that have fins and scales you do not eat. No, my bad. All that have all that have scales and fins you do eat, I meant to say. Okay, so, and whatever does not have fins and scales you do not eat. It is unclean for you. Any clean bird you do eat, but these do not eat. The eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture. I wanted to make, kind of explain something to people, because this is like a lot of animals being thrown at once, a lot of creatures being thrown at once. The reason you're not meant to eat these birds most likely is because they're prey birds. They're scavengers. They take stuff that's dead. They eat whatever that's on the ground dead, like roadkill and stuff like that. So they're very similar to pigs and stuff like that. They're very similar to shellfish that are pretty much vacuum cleaners for the earth, as we stated in the last video. So they're the same type of creature. So that's something they have in common. The eagle, the vulture, they're all birds of prey. So I just wanted to explain that to the viewers.
Doug, where are you?
Verse 17 of Deuteronomy 14.
Okay, well, I didn't hear you
Oh,
speaking.
okay.
So.
Oh, okay. I thought I was unmuted. Okay. I started reading from verses 14 to 17 just now, where it starts talking about the raven and then the ostrich and the nighthawk, and then seagull, the hawk after their kinds, the little owl, the great owl, the white owl, and the pelican and the carrion vulture. And then it goes to the fisher owl and the stork and the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe and the bat. And every creeping insect that flies is unclean for you. They are not eaten. Any clean bird you do eat. Do not eat whatever dies of itself. And right here, here's the commandment. Give it to the stranger who is within your gates. That's kind of weird. So like basically a Gentile can eat of it. That's a little weird. Or sell it to a foreigner. What? That's a little weird. I don't know. That's kind of weird to me because there's supposed to be one law. That seems a little weird. I don't know. That's a little controversial there.
But if a person is defiling themselves again and again by not doing Yahuwah's law, then they might as well have it.
So
I guess.
I'm gonna pull a Bobby right now, and a question just came up in my head, and this is gonna be a controversial thing here. So technically, should we be telling foreigners not to eat pork?
Not unless they ask, because their minds aren't open to it unless they ask.
Because I'm pretty sure Bobby and Kristen might have been thinking what I was thinking. If you're able to give something that dies of itself or something unclean to a foreigner, what's the point of telling them not to eat it? That's the thing I was thinking of, like, just now. I was like, so what's the point? Like
the Chinese will eat cats and dogs. I mean, they're that disgusting. So to tell them, well, you can't eat that deer because it got run over by a car and died, they're not going to understand. They won't get it.
All right, so that pretty much concludes the Deuteronomy 14 portion. So pretty much this is just a second witness of Leviticus 11. You could look at it as Deuteronomy 1 to 21. Now, verse 1 obviously speaks on what we talked about with Paul's letters in the beginning of this video, how he talks about, actually it speaks on a lot of pagan traditions in this first verse. It talks about not cutting yourself or shave the front of your head for the dead. So that's a pagan custom that they would do in mourning. So to explain that for the viewers, that's something that the heathen nations would do to worship their deities. That's why Yahuwah is telling them not to do that.
It can also mean don't tattoo yourself, because that's cutting your flesh.
Oh yeah, and actually, actually, there's a verse that specifically says that even in the King James. Like it actually is a separate commandment even from cutting yourself. It'll actually say, I think 1611 King James, it says, "Do not put any tattoo marks on your body." So the 11 actually tells you that you're not supposed to be doing that. And I remember my grandma as a kid, my grandma saw me with a press on. She was about to kill me. My dad took me to like the beach, and I got like a stupid little fake tattoo, and she was about to like murder my dad. But anyway, but yeah, so yeah, I think there's a verse. I actually would like to look that up real quick and actually find that verse. It's actually let's see. Do not put any tattoo marks on your body. And I know some Baptists actually don't believe in tattoos. Like they actually at least hold to this. Leviticus 19 verse 28. That's the verse I was looking for. So Leviticus chapter 19 verse 28. And let's see here. Let's go back to the shared screen real quick here. And so it says, Leviticus 19:28 says right here, and you shall not make cuttings in your body for a dead body, and you shall not inscribe on yourselves any marks. That's the Septuagint. Inscribe on yourselves any marks. I'm Yahuwah your Elohim. But if you look at the 1611 King James, it says, you shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, comma, nor print any marks upon you. I am Yahuwah. Now, obviously, in context, it's talking about tattoos. And most modern translations will say tattoos. Like the English Standard Version says, you shall not make any cuts on your bodies for the dead or tattoo yourselves. So the English Standard Version actually puts in tattoo yourselves. So they understand the context. So that's the actual commandment, to not put tattoos on your body. And for people that say, oh, well, I got scripture verses on my body, that's still sinning. Doesn't matter what you have as a tattoo. I told an old friend that a couple of years ago. Like, it doesn't matter if you have, like, you know, Isaiah 54:17. It doesn't matter what you have on there. You're tattooing your body. So let's see here.
Yeah. Hallelujah Scriptures actually says, do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yahuwah.
That's nice. I like that for the Hallelujah Scriptures. They make it a little more modern, and they kind of explain the context, because a lot of these older ones just say, like, marks on your body. Like, unless you understand context, like, people wouldn't even know what that means. Like a lot of the older translations will just say, you know, don't inscribe marks on yourselves. Like, so I kind of like that the Hallelujah Scriptures makes it a little bit more specific. Let's see here. So we're going to stay in Deuteronomy here. We're going to go to chapter 18, we're going to start at verse 9 and end at verse 14. So we can go to Deuteronomy 18 and start at verse 9, which says, and when you shall have entered into the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, you shall not learn to do according to the abominations of those nations. There shall be not found in you one who purges his son or his daughter with fire, or one who uses divination, who deals with omens and auguries. So if I change the translation here, it'll probably make it a little bit more easier for people to understand. So it says, you shall not be found, no one should be found among you who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer or one who inquires of the dead. So for all you people that are saying, oh, there's you know, Harry Potter's just a movie, no, don't let your kids watch that. That's an abomination to Yahuwah. Don't. And, you know, I know a lot of believers, even in the Torah movement, oh, it's just a movie. No, it's not just a movie. They're promoting abominations, and they're making abominations look attractive to your children. So no, don't allow your kids to see it. But anyway, that's enough rambling for me. And it says in verse 12, for whoever does these things is an abomination to Yahuwah. And because of these abominations, Yahuwah, your Elohim, is driving them out before you. So verse 12 actually tells you that these nations that Yahuwah had the Yashvalites dispossess were doing these things. And that's why he drove them out. So that is the end of that portion of Deuteronomy 18. Don't really have much to elaborate on that. That's pretty much self-explanatory. And I actually have another cross-reference here from Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23, which says, "Only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh." So that's just another cross-reference, not to eat blood, and not to eat meat with blood still in it. So that's Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23. And we're going to keep moving forward here. And I kind of want to go back to the dietary instruction thing. I have another cross-reference here. Isaiah 66, verse 17. Now, this is future context. Okay, so kind of mind this, readers and listeners that are listening to this. This is future prophetic context that Yahuwah is talking in. So people that might have a preconceived bias that all foods are made clean, check this out. Isaiah 66, verse 17. And this is talking about the day of Yahuwah. "Those who set apart and purify themselves to go into the gardens, following one in the midst, eating pig's flesh or swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mice shall come to an end together, declares Yahuwah." Okay? So that's basically saying he's going to destroy people that are eating swine's flesh. I mean, that's pretty much literal there. Okay, so people that say that that's past context, that was in the day of Isaiah. If you read the whole chapter of Isaiah 66, it's end times context. Hasn't happened yet. So I want to make that extremely clear. So let's see. Now, while we're there, I think we should keep on with the prophets. And let me see here. Let me just pause the recording real quick. There seems to be something happening. All right, we're back. I'm going to be just reading like one or two cross-references, and then everyone else can jump in and kind of add before we end the study here. So Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 8 is another one that talks about come out from Babylon and be separate. Let's see here. "Flee from the midst of Babylon and go out of the land of the Chaldeans and be as male goats before the flock." Now that's the ESV. Now let's see here. So that's talking about fleeing out of Babylon. And basically that's a cross-reference for where Paul is talking about in the New Testament, be ye separate. Don't be like them. Don't be like the heathen. Okay, so, and then we also have Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 13, which says, "Because of the wrath of Yahuwah it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goes by Babylon shall be astonished and hissing at all her plagues." Okay, so, and then the last verse I have from this chapter is, "The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of Yahuwah our Elohim, the vengeance of his temple." Now, that's very key to me because we just read in Corinthians that we are a temple. So, and we also read from Corinthians that he destroyed those who pollute his temple. So technically, if you're not fleeing from Babylon, you're not fleeing the ways of Babylon, which is to be unclean and all these things we discussed, then his wrath is going to be upon you for his temple. So that's something I wanted to touch on. And also a cross-reference for this is, if you stay in Babylon, you will receive of these plagues. Revelations chapter 18, verse 4, I think this is a perfect verse to end with. "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her transgressions, that you receive not of her plagues." Okay? And that's pretty much going to conclude today's study. I also wanted to mention that even the tradition of eating unclean foods comes from Babylon and the pagans. And so just think about that today, and this study that we were able to present you guys today. Hopefully that's going to open you guys to actually obeying Yahuwah's commandments and realizing that it's a serious matter. You know, his wrath abides on people that are eating abominations, that are doing abominable things like passing their children through the fire. And you know what? I would even say abortion is a spiritual way of doing that. So that's something you should think about too. That giving your children over to Molech, it might not be happening physically modern day, passing through the fire, but who are you offering your abortions to? Just something to think about, and abortions were actually taught by fallen angels. I just wanted to add that in. Read the book of Enoch. They were taught to mankind by fallen angels.
And when you think about the way they kill the baby knows that he's being attacked and he runs from it. They've shot film inside a mother's womb and they were doing an abortion and the baby's going like this, trying to protect itself. You cannot say that it's just a clump of unconscionable flesh. It is not. It's a person in there. You're killing a human being when you commit an abortion. It's a horrible sin.
Anyone here? I got everyone unmuted now, basically. Anyone want to add anything for the viewers to hear? Maybe anything that I might have missed? Well, okay. Well, hopefully this message helps you guys, and hopefully if some Christians came across this video, hopefully this kind of opened your eyes to Yahuwah's law and his commandments, and maybe struck a chord with you, maybe kind of pushed you in the direction to wanting to obey him, and actually unlearning the lies that have been taught by traditions, as I read from Mark 7:6-7. That we worship Yahuwah in vain if we try to use traditions of man that are substituting his commandments. So that's just something to think about too today. Hopefully this message beroots all you viewers and all you listeners, and I want to thank you for joining us. Hopefully this is something that you will look into, and like I say, for non-believers, the first beginning step, the first thing you need to worry about is accepting Yahushua as your personal savior. And after that, read Acts 15:29 to start off. Those are things that you really, if you're a new convert, that's something you really need to get under control, is resisting fornication, sexual morality, adultery, not eating things sacrificed to idols, and not consuming blood in any way. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for joining us, though. It was a pleasure bringing this study to you guys. Shalom.
Shalom.
Whoa.